Hi there. My name is Alex and welcome to your training session on how to improve your coaching skills. By the end of this video, you will have brushed up on your knowledge of what coaching is and polished your questioning and listening skills so you can coach your team members to become even better at what they do. This video is divided into a number of different sections, each focusing on a different aspect of coaching. As we progress through the video, I will ask you to stop and pause for a moment to consider a skill that needs to be applied when coaching someone. This may be something that you want to go away with and practice after you've finished watching this video. Of course, feel free to make notes along the way. We've got lots to cover, so jot down anything that particularly piques your interest. Including the exercises that I will be inviting you to take part in, this short training course will take about 20 minutes to complete. So, let's get going. First things first, let me explain to you why you should be interested in coaching. Do you ever experience lots of questions from team members on things they should and probably already know? Or perhaps they are struggling with problems that are new to them. Or maybe they just lack the motivation to get on and do what they need to do. These are all great reasons for coaching. Coaching is good for your team member, yourself, and your organization. And when you get a reputation for coaching others well, you will find that their loyalty and levels of engagement increase. Coaching is a great leadership skill to have and use. But first, just to make sure that we're on the same page, let's just clarify what we mean by coaching. Coaching is not training. Training is very much telling or showing someone how to do something. For example, how to follow a particular process or procedure, such as greeting a customer. Coaching is different. Coaching is about asking how your team member can approach a problem or complete a procedure, such as how could they meet and greet a particular type of customer. Because training can only cover the basics of any job, coaching is there to help team members get to the next level. It's important to see that coaching is a joint problem-solving process. When coaching, you act as a guide to help your team member get to the right answer, their answer. Coaching is not about giving team members solutions. Instead, coaching is about letting them find their own answers, with your help along the way. And because the solution is theirs, this increases ownership and commitment. I'll talk more about this later on. I remember one of my previous managers explaining to me what coaching is by using this analogy. If you give someone a fish, then they will eat for today. But if you teach someone how to fish, then they will eat for the rest of their life. For me, this analogy absolutely sums up what coaching is. And as a result, team members become more engaged, more committed, and less dependent upon you. Okay then, so let's go and learn how to teach fishing. When coaching, we need to pay attention to 3 important skills: how to ask questions, how to actively listen, and how to respond. Okay, so let's first talk about questions. When coaching, it's very important to ask open questions. By this, I mean questions that open up a conversation using words such as what, why, who, where, when, and how. Open questions are very different from closed questions. Closed questions are those that get either a yes or a no answer. Although closed questions have their place to clarify facts or your understanding about what's gone on, it is using open questions that gets the best responses. The whole purpose of using open questions is to get your team member to talk, because if you are doing most of the talking yourself, then you are not coaching, you are telling. Telling people will be just giving them a fish. Using open questions is probably a skill you will need to develop. This is because as managers, we've been so used to being the expert, asking people what they have done or haven't done, and then telling people what to do. Let's face it, we were promoted because we were really good at what we used to do. But now things have changed. Things are different. You're now the manager, and a key part of your job is to get your team members to do things for themselves. This is where coaching comes in. So coaching is very much about developing others. Therefore, we need to kick the habit of asking closed questions and instead develop the habit of becoming curious in a natural and non-threatening way. Here are some examples of open questions that you can use. What can you now do? Why did that happen? Who said what? To who? Where did that go wrong? When did this issue first occur? How can it be best resolved? Okay, got it? Let me give you a practical example. Remember that greeting a customer situation that I mentioned earlier? Well, here's a great example of how you can use an open question to get the best possible results. By asking, what could you have said to greet the customer in a more friendlier way? Asking this will help your team member think through their response to your question, and then you can discuss how useful their response will be going forward. Finally, on the topic of questions, it's important to ask your team member only one question at a time. Asking multiple questions is not helpful as it risks confusing your team member, as they won't know which question to answer. So remember to ask one question at a time and then be quiet. Let your team member think through their response. Be patient. Asking the right questions is so important. So if you want to know more about how to ask deeper questions, then why not read our blog article on this topic? Simply go to our blog page and enter deeper questions in the search box and you'll find the article. Before we continue and explore other coaching skills, I want you to think about the types of open questions that you can use. So in a moment, I will ask you to press the pause button to take time to reflect on the type of open questions you can ask when coaching. To do this, think of some opportunities that you have to coach a team member, and then create some open questions that will be helpful. So please get ready to press the pause button. You will find it by hovering over the bottom left-hand corner of this video screen. Once you are ready to continue watching this video, please press play. Again, this button is in the bottom left-hand corner of this screen. Okay? Please press the pause button and take time to reflect on the type of open questions you can ask when coaching. Let's continue. Now, when you are going to ask a question, you need to listen to the answer. And I mean really listen. You need to remove all the distractions and pay attention. By this, I mean mental distractions as well as physical distractions. Mental distractions can be those thoughts that can randomly come into your head. Or maybe you're still processing information from a previous conversation with someone else. Or perhaps you are thinking about a meeting with another colleague that you have later. Whatever these mental distractions are, you need to park them for now and fully concentrate on your coaching session. Now I'd like you to think of all the physical distractions that could get in the way of your coaching session. I'll provide you with one to help start you off. Someone else just butting in without any invitation and interrupting your coaching conversation. You could prevent this from happening by making sure that your coaching session is private, in a quiet place away from others. Now press pause again and make a list of all the other possible distractions that could hinder your coaching session. Alongside your list, write down a solution that could prevent this distraction from happening in the first place. Next, I'd like to emphasize the importance of listening to not just what is being said, but also the need to pay attention to what is not being said. For example, sometimes team members can be reluctant to share how they are feeling about a situation. They may feel quite vulnerable because they've done something wrong. They can feel that they are being judged, which can make them become quite defensive. Therefore, some degree of empathy is needed. By this, I mean that just because you may find the task easy yourself, it doesn't mean to say that your team member feels the same way. Therefore, you need to listen carefully and observe your team member's body language. For example, are they fidgeting or looking uncomfortable? Is their body language open and congruent with what they are saying? So be prepared to check with your team member if you are in any doubt. For example, you could ask, "Are you sure?" Or, "Tell me more about that." Be prepared to probe, but not in a threatening way. Although coaching can be about challenge, it needs to be done in a supportive manner so not to alienate your team member. You can now see how questioning and listening skills work together. This is very much what effective coaching is all about. You ask the questions, And then you listen to your team members' responses, guiding them to a workable solution. Listening is not easy, but it is a leadership skill that needs to be acquired. Again, we've blog articles on our website which provide even more information on listening, such as listening to understand rather than listening to respond, and the 4 levels of listening. As I mentioned before, you can search for these on our website. If you want to, feel free to press pause to take a short break from this video. Press play when you are ready to rejoin the final part, which will look at how we need to respond when our team members offer suggestions and comments. So, having worked on our questioning and listening skills, the final part of this video will focus on how we need to respond when our team members provide comments or offer suggestions. Why is this important? Well, coaching is very much about getting people to feel engaged and motivated. We want our team members to offer their suggestions and then take ownership of their solutions. So how we respond is going to influence this. There are many ways that we can respond when someone says something. For example, we can respond in an evaluative way. By this, I mean making a judgment about what the other person has said. We can say that's good or bad, or we can be indifferent. And it's not just our words, either. Our body language and facial expressions can speak volumes without anything verbally ever being said. So when we are coaching a team member, we need to be mindful and not be too judgmental. Why? Because if we are too judgmental, we may appear to be too superior and risk putting the team member down. This is something to avoid when we want our team member to be engaged and enthusiastic about solving a problem. What's my advice? Well, if a team member suggests something really wacky or unworkable, why not ask an open question such as, "What do you think the consequences of doing this will be?" Let's be honest. Being evaluative is hard to avoid. This is because we often go around making judgments all the time. It's what we do. However, when coaching, we must learn to hold on to our judgments and let your team member reach their own conclusions. The next trap we can fall into is the one about making assumptions. When we are listening to others, our brains work so quick that we can make all sorts of interpretations of what the other person is saying. This can send us down all sorts of rabbit holes where we begin to imagine all sorts of scenarios. These scenarios are likely to be different to the one that the other person is describing. To avoid this from happening when coaching, focus as hard as you can on what the other person is actually saying and park those assumptions. You could also ask a closed question too to check your understanding. As well as being evaluative and making assumptions, another way that we can respond is being supportive. When coaching, this can be when we just go along with what your team member is saying. By this, I mean that we listen and repeat something that has or is being said, or even just make some encouraging noises such as, "Uh-huh," "Yes," and so on. Of course, when we're coaching, we need to be supportive. However, we also need to be brave enough to challenge. To do this, we are back to asking open questions again, such as, what could be an even better option? Or, how else could this be achieved? This leads me into the next way of how we can respond to others. I call this probing. Earlier in this video, I talked a lot about the importance of asking questions. And yes, coaching is very much about being curious. Curious about why people do and say the things that they do. But we must be very careful about not turning our coaching session into what can be felt as some sort of interrogation. So hold back on asking too many questions in too much of a quick succession. Instead, give your team member lots of time to respond to the question that you've asked. Be patient and listen hard. Another way that we can respond is by simply reflecting back what the other person has just said, adjusting your tone of voice accordingly to turn this into a question. This doesn't have to be the whole sentence, just a key word or phrase. For example, if a team member says, "I'm really struggling with this," You could simply reflect back by repeating, struggling. This has the added advantage of not only keeping the conversation going, but also demonstrates that you are listening, that is, actively listening. But you need to watch out that you don't overuse this way of responding. Overuse of reflecting back can become frustrating and even annoying to the person you are coaching. So let's just recap on the different ways we can respond to team members when coaching. Evaluative. That is making judgment, making assumptions, being supportive, probing for more information, and reflecting back what has been said. Each of these have their place, but they need to be used in the right way, with the right tone of voice, and not be overused. So, this concludes this video on how to improve your coaching skills by improving how we ask questions, listen, and pay attention to our own responses to suggestions that are made. I hope that you have enjoyed watching it, taking part in the exercises that I asked you to do, and found the whole experience useful. Coaching is such an amazing thing to do. It encourages taking responsibility of resolving issues and promotes ownership of the solution. Coaching helps move team members from compliance to commitment. This is good news for you, your team member, and your customers. As you coach more and more of your team members, your reputation will increase as a manager who grows and develops their team. This will mean that people will want to come and work with you. Coaching others will also, in the long run, mean that you will have more time to focus on your own role. As team members become more self-sufficient, they will take on more responsibility and solve things for themselves. Remember what my old boss said? If you give someone a fish, they will eat for today. But if you teach someone how to fish, they will eat for the rest of their life. This is coaching. Thank you for watching this video and taking part in this short course on how to improve your coaching skills. Do remember to check out our blog articles and also recommended video on our website. They are all designed to support your personal and professional development. And of course, if you want to know more, then do get in touch. For example, our coaching and mentoring skills training program is accredited by the Institute of Leadership. Delivered either in person or online, this hands-on course is super practical with lots of opportunities to practice coaching skills and receive high-quality feedback from your trainer. So do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.